the face of my killer, staring back at me in horror. It was a family member, someone I had trusted all my life. Betrayal hit me as hard as the bullet they'd fired to end my life. The truth had unlocked the chains that bound my soul to this world. The medium's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me of my choice, vengeance or peace. The weight of the decision bore down on me as I felt the pull of the afterlife. But I couldn't leave yet. As I approached the forest clearing where the creature had nearly taken my life all those years ago, I could feel the weight of the curse hanging in the air. My body tensed as the eerie familiarity of the trees sent a shiver down my spine. This place had held me captive for years, its memory gnawing at my mind. The letter I had received was crumpled in my hand, and I was more determined than ever to end whatever had been started that night. I wasn't alone this time. A group of paranormal investigators had contacted me, each intrigued by the stories that surrounded Blackwood Forest. They had come with their cameras and their devices, but I wasn't sure any technology could combat what lurked in the shadows. We stood in the clearing, surrounded by the ancient stones that marked a forgotten ritual ground. The leader of the group, a man named Derek, looked around nervously. "Something's not right here. These stones, they've seen something evil." A cold breeze whipped through the trees, and in the distance, I heard the faint sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate. My heart pounded as I turned, half expecting the creature to appear once again. But it wasn't the creature. A figure stepped out from behind the trees, draped in tattered robes, its face hidden beneath a dark hood. It moved with an eerie grace, almost floating over the ground. "You should have stayed away," the figure said, its voice a chilling whisper. "What is this place?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why were we attacked? Why did you summon me back?" The figure raised its hand, and the stones around us began to glow with a faint, sickly light. "This place is a portal, a bridge between worlds. Long ago, a bargain was struck, and now it is time for the debt to be paid." Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and the air grew thick with malevolent energy. The investigators scrambled to get their equipment working, but it was clear that nothing could protect us from what was coming. The figure's hood fell back, revealing a face that was both familiar and terrifying. It was me, an older, twisted version of myself. My doppelgänger's eyes glowed with the same ember-like intensity that I had seen in the creature's gaze all those years ago. "I am what you will become," it whispered. "Unless you end this now." Fear coursed through my veins as I realized the truth. The forest had marked me that night, and it had been slowly corrupting me ever since. Every decision, every misstep, had led me back here, to face myself. The doppelgänger raised a hand, and the ground beneath the stones began to split open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. The investigators screamed as they were pulled toward the portal, their bodies twisted and contorted by unseen forces. I stood frozen, watching in horror as the forest claimed them, one by one. "Your time has come," the doppelgänger said, stepping closer. "You can either embrace the darkness or fight it. But know this, if you fail, Blackwood will consume you." With a surge of adrenaline, I reached for the only weapon I had, a silver dagger that Derek had brought along, supposedly blessed by some ancient ritual. I didn't know if it would work, but I had no other choice. I lunged at the doppelgänger, plunging the dagger into its chest. It let out a guttural scream as the vortex behind us grew larger, pulling everything into its abyss. The doppelgänger crumpled to the ground, its body dissolving into ash. The portal began to close, and the air around me grew still once more. But the curse was far from over. Months passed after my ordeal in Blackwood Forest, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The nightmares were worse now, filled with twisted images of the forest and the doppelgänger's amber eyes. One evening, I received a letter postmarked from Ravenwood Manor. My great-uncle's mansion had been abandoned since I had fled, but the letter was unmistakably from the estate. Inside, a single line was scrawled in red ink. I hesitated, but I knew I had no choice. Something was drawing me back to the place where it all began. Ravenwood loomed on the horizon as I approached, its windows dark and its walls crumbling. The twisted grins in the portrait gallery greeted me once again, but this time, they seemed to be laughing. As I ventured deeper into the mansion, the air grew thick with the same malevolent energy I had felt in Blackwood Forest. It wasn't long before I found myself standing before the hidden room in the basement, where my great-uncle's journals had revealed the dark history of my family's pacts with the supernatural. The door creaked open, revealing the room exactly as I had left it, except for one difference. A figure stood in the center, its back to me. It was dressed in the same tattered robes I had seen in the forest, but this time, there was no hood to hide its face. It was me again. "I warned you," the figure said, turning to face me. "You should have never come back." The walls of the room began to pulse with a sickly glow, and I realized that the mansion itself was alive, feeding off the darkness that had plagued my family for generations. "You are the last heir," the doppelgänger said. "You must complete the ritual, or the curse will consume you." My heart raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. "What ritual? What do I have to do?" The figure stepped closer, and I could see the madness in its eyes, my eyes. "Sacrifice," it whispered. "You must sacrifice what is most precious to you." I thought of my friends, my family, the people I had left behind to come here. But none of them felt as important as my own soul, the part of me that had been slowly eaten away by the darkness. "I won't do it," I said, my voice shaking. "I won't give in to the curse." The doppelgänger's face twisted into a sinister grin. "Then you will die." The room began to collapse around me, the walls caving in as the malevolent energy consumed everything in its path. I could feel the darkness closing in, suffocating me, pulling me down into the abyss. But just as I was about to give up, I remembered the silver dagger, the one that had saved me in Blackwood Forest. I pulled it from my belt and drove it into the ground, hoping it would somehow break the curse. The ground beneath me shook, and a blinding light filled the room. The darkness recoiled, retreating into the shadows as the mansion itself began to crumble. When the light faded, I found myself standing alone in the ruins of Ravenwood Manor. The doppelgänger was gone, and the twisted grins in the portraits had faded into blank, empty stares. The curse had been broken, but the cost had been high. Years passed, and the nightmares slowly faded. I had moved far away from Blackwood Forest and Ravenwood Manor, hoping to leave the darkness behind. But one night, as I sat alone in my new home, I received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was faint, barely more than a whisper. "You may have broken the curse," the voice said, "but you will never be free." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there in the dark, staring at the phone in my hand. The memories of Blackwood Forest and Ravenwood Manor came flooding back, and I realized that the darkness had never truly left me. It was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And this time, I wasn't sure if I would survive.